people free will to choose to do otherwise. Why would you even choose to be on the side of a God who does sort of things like that, you know? Who gives you free will and then says, well, if you don't worship me, then you're screwed. Sorry.
We're really getting off the subject here. I mean, I'm sorry. We're really getting off the subject.
Yeah, that would be a little different. Was there a creator at all? This might be a bigger view of there had to be a creator of some kind. Now, who was he and what's he like? What are his attributes? What's his personality like? That's kind of a different subject. But is there a creator? You know, and then if there's a creator, was it Buddha or Allah or Jehovah or, you know, this is where theologians differ by the thousands, you know. And the only way to know for sure who's right is to ask me, of course. I've been involved in, you know, a lot of things as far as energy conservation. I've built numerous houses, and I have tried, you know, with all the different energy conservation laws, but as well as wind generators and that type. I'm very interested in that type of stuff. I'd love to see the results.
I'll give you an address for it. You'd love it. It's a great location.
Yes, sir.
I have a question going back to the dinosaurs. Do you think that the dinosaurs that survived past the flood were just survivors that did not go, or were there dinosaurs that were, smaller ones, of course, that were on the ark, or were they all just survivors in the water, like plesiosaur or the brontosaurs or so? Were there dinosaurs on the ark?
I would say there had to be dinosaurs on the ark, those that needed to be. The Bible is very plain. Noah brought air-breathing, land-dwelling animals. He did not need to bring fish on the ark or whales. We have classified whale as a mammal. Well, our classification system dates back a couple hundred years. The Bible classification system may be different, where if it lives in the water, it's a fish, be it whale, dolphin, you know, or barracuda. So we cannot take today's classification system and fault the Bible, because a whale may have been considered a fish in biblical terminology, which was long before Carolus Linnaeus came along. But the air-breathing, land-dwelling dinosaurs, we assume Brachiosaurus would have been land-dwelling, though some say, no, they lived in water because they were too heavy to support their weight. I don't know. But Noah, being 600 years old when this boat was built, would have been smart enough to figure out to bring 2 babies on the ark. Just be sure to get a pink one and a blue one. All right? The reason for bringing babies would be numerous. For one thing, there's only about 40 different kinds of dinosaurs. There are 800 different varieties in the textbooks. You know, there's a brachiosaur, the apatosaur, the cetosaur. But if you look at a cetosaurus and an apatosaurus, you're going to say that's the same kind of dinosaur. It's like there are 250 varieties of dogs, but Noah only had to have 2 of the dog kind on the ark. There may be 800 names of dinosaurs out there for these kids to try to learn, but there's only 30 or 40 basic kinds. And if you limit it to babies, no problem, or young ones. After this flood, the climate was different. The water-dwelling dinosaurs, of course, many of those would have been destroyed. In catastrophic conditions, fish get killed in the water. You know, an earthquake underwater can kill fish in the water. Thermal shock or just the shock of the tectonic plates moving. But some would survive. You know, because there's a catastrophe, a worldwide catastrophe, doesn't mean it's simultaneously catastrophic. There may be, you know, earthquake here, and 6 months later, earthquake here. You know, tranquil seas would be someplace. We would have tranquility in the midst of the chaos. Okay, so Noah happened to be in those spots with his ark floating.
As part of your theory, did you say that there have been no new species created since the creation?
No, I would say there have been no new kinds created. As far as species, the Great Dane, or the Chihuahua, is probably a phenomena of the last 500 years. They probably did not have any Chihuahuas 500 years ago. But is a Chihuahua a new species? Well, it's kind of a subspecies.
We call them all dogs the same species.
Yeah.
I mean, new species like the frog, for example.
Right. There's a whole bunch of varieties of frogs. I don't know how many different varieties, but that's where I would be very cautious to stick with the word kind, not species.
By species, we define it as interbreeding. Yeah. So there's
I don't know that I would even go.
There's nothing new since creation.
I would not go with that definition.
Nothing significantly new.
Yeah, nothing significantly new. Interfertile may not be the divisional line between the kinds. You might be able to take a horse and a zebra and get them to interbreed. You may be able to get, some have argued that they've been able to get a cat and a dog. I've not seen any proof of that. That kind of stuff appears in Inquirer magazine from time to time, you know, that a dat or a cog is born. But they argue that you can get a lion and a tiger, a liger. I think that's been done and fairly well documented. But stand away and look at it. They're both the same kind of animal. You know,
so many species have disappeared since then, but none have been created. None have evolved since then.
Many species have disappeared, and some complete kinds may have disappeared. Probably the Tyrannosaurus rex. I would say, within the first few thousand years, if you could kill a T-Rex, you would be a hero. They'd tell stories about you around the campfire. And the story gets blown out of proportion with the telling of it, and pretty soon he's got, breathing fire and flying around and, big as a mountain. But I think the basis of the story was in historical fact. They were killing off dinosaurs.
The Bible doesn't mention dinosaurs.
Oh, it does too.
Does it really?
In the book of Job,
Have a reference?
oh yeah, Job is right in the center of the Bible, just before the book of Psalms. Job chapter 40 and verse number 15 talks about behemoth. It says behemoth is the chief of the ways of God. The Hebrew word there is the biggest. That would, I think, probably be the Brachiosaurus. It says he moves his tail like a cedar tree. Well, it had a tail like a cedar tree. Some reference Bibles will say behemoth. It was an elephant hippopotamus. You got to understand, in 1841, the bones were put together of the first reconstructed dinosaur. 1841. King James Version of the Bible was translated in 1611. So if dinosaurs were nearly extinct 1,000 years ago, let's say for all practical purposes they're totally extinct, people forgot about them. During the Dark Ages, the knowledge of dinosaurs and dragons was lost. First-hand knowledge. They're gone. They died out 500 years earlier. When they started putting the bones together in the 1800s, the people said, wow, where did this come from? So it was a golden opportunity to try to teach, well, maybe they lived millions of years ago. Actually, it was in the 1800s that the word prehistoric was invented. The word prehistoric will not be in a dictionary from the 1700s.
Would you say dinosaurs were around during the time of the Roman Empire?
I think they were, and I have some pictures on, I got 6, 7 carousels full of slides. Roman mosaics have been found showing dragons fighting, long-necked dinosaurs. Paintings found in caves in Africa, even scratchings in the walls of the Grand Canyon depict dinosaurs. Legends by the thousands, of course, persist of dinosaurs, or what I would consider dinosaur. They call them dragons normally, the typical designation of it. Many of the ancient ships' logbooks talk about dragons or sea monsters. Captain Peter McKay, HMS Daedalus, here's the whole account right here. He and his whole crew watched for 20 minutes as a sea monster swam under their boat. The sailors begged him. They said, Captain, don't write this in the logbook. We're just going to get laughed at, even though they all saw it. I mean, there are thousands of stories like that out there. And there are books up here in your library, about Loch Ness Monster and Lake Champlain Monster. There have been 21 expeditions now to Africa. Largest swamp in the world is the Likawala Swamp in Africa, 55,000 square miles, which makes it bigger than the whole state of Florida. That swamp, Dr. Roy Mackle, University of Chicago, microbiology professor, he's been over there twice. He's going again this month or next month. His phone number and address is right here. Call him up. After his 2 trips in 1980 and 81, a movie was made called Baby, about the possibility of dinosaurs still living in the African swamp. Now, I'm not saying they're everywhere and they're running around Pensacola, but it's a big world. You get a swamp as big as Florida that's nearly uninhabited. Matter of fact, the Congo government that owns it said it's 80% unexplored. They've flown over it and mapped it, but that's not exploring it.
If it's such a big world that we can miss dinosaurs, then maybe we're missing some new species that you claim aren't happening. I mean, how do we know that we know all the species that are there and we don't know the new ones if we don't know the old ones either? I mean,
here you're arguing from lack of evidence again.
Whoa.
You're
No,
arguing
you're
from a
telling
negative
me-
position. Yes,
You're
you are.
telling me that there's, I know the name of that thing, Moncola Mbembe might be out there, and it's reasonable to assume that. But you're also saying that we know for sure that there's no new species.
Oh, I didn't say there's no new species. There's probably a lot of stuff yet to be discovered.
You said there haven't been any new species since the flood. You told me
There
that.
haven't been any new kinds, would be my argument.
What is a kind?
That's a nebulous term. What is a species, for that matter? Nobody's got a good definition of species
What is a
either.
great definition of species?
You'll be the first one to know it.
Look it up. Everybody's got it in the back. Look it up in the little anthropology book there. It's got a definition of
You
species.
get 50 different anthropologists or biologists to define the word species. You come up with 50 different definitions.
Gee, the only one I've ever heard is that it's an interbreeding